Hey everyone, come closer for a moment. Let's have a real talk tonight, because I know so many of you are out there crushing it. You're the early risers, the late night grinders, navigating the chaos of life just to build something meaningful, to earn your way. You're putting in the hours, chasing those opportunities, and when a little win comes, you breathe a sigh of relief because you know what it took to get there. But lately, I've been thinking about something profound. It doesn't matter how many hustles you juggle, how many deals you close, or how impressive that number looks in your bank account. If you haven't learned to command it, it will always slip through your fingers. We live in a world that celebrates the non-stop hustle. Keep pushing, they say. Sacrifice now, enjoy later. And yes, there's truth in that. But sometimes, in that relentless pursuit of more, we neglect what's already in our hands. You might have doubled, tripled, even quadrupled your income. But if your spending expands at the same rate, you're still standing on zero. Or even worse, you're sinking. It's a trap so many fall into, believing that the answer to their financial woes is simply more money. And while increased income can help, it's not the only answer. I've seen high flyers drowning in debt. I've witnessed fortunes vanish with a single misstep. So, it's not just about the amount. It's about your ability to make wise choices when that money arrives. It's understanding the critical difference between a need and a want. It's having the strength to say no, even when your wallet technically says yes. Let's be honest, sometimes we buy things not because we truly need them, but because we're seeking a temporary boost, a little reward for our hard work. And that's okay, sometimes. But when that becomes the default, when emotions drive your spending instead of wisdom, that's where the trouble begins. That's why sheer hard work alone isn't the ultimate solution. It's a vital ingredient, but it's incomplete. Even the most dedicated worker can find themselves financially adrift without a compass for their finances. Even the most ambitious dreamer can stay stuck if their spending habits keep pulling them backwards. So yes, work hard, earn, build, hustle. But please, don't forget that the real challenge isn't just getting the money. It's knowing what to do when it shows up. And when those blessings arrive, when your efforts finally bear fruit, that's when the real test begins. Because here's a fundamental truth. Earning money is one thing, keeping it is another, and growing it, that's a whole different ballgame. Just because your income increases doesn't automatically equate to progress. It doesn't guarantee financial freedom. It doesn't even mean you're secure. That was a tough lesson I had to learn firsthand. There was a season of abundance, more than I'd ever seen before. Opportunities were flowing, collaborations, projects. It felt like everything was clicking. But at the end of each month, that nagging question would surface. Where did it all go? I wasn't living extravagantly, but I also wasn't paying attention. No budget, no future planning, just riding the wave, thinking that as long as it kept coming, everything would be fine. But that mindset, that false sense of security, is dangerous. When you believe your income is the answer to everything, you become blind to your own habits. You start relying on the inflow instead of the outflow, and that's the beginning of instability. Even with a hefty income, people live paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because their lifestyle inflates with their earnings. A raise leads to a better car, a bigger apartment, another loan, a never-ending cycle of more income, more expenses, and zero peace. And often, we don't even see it. To the outside world, they look successful. The nice clothes, the fancy dinners, the expensive toys. But inside, they're worried. They're stretched thin. They don't talk about it, but they feel it. The pressure to maintain the image, the fear of it all collapsing. That's the trap of mismanagement. It hides behind the facade of success, making you think you're doing okay because the numbers are big, but the underlying habits are broken. That's why simply earning more isn't the ultimate goal. Because without the wisdom to handle what you have, no amount will ever feel like enough. You'll keep chasing that next paycheck, that next bonus, always thinking that one day you'll finally feel secure. But security doesn't come from income. It comes from intention. It comes from awareness. It comes from knowing exactly where your money is going and why. That is true financial freedom. Not just having money, but having control. And when you lack that control, when you're clueless about where your money disappears to, it's like trying to fill a bucket riddled with holes. No matter how much you pour in, it will never stay full. You can work overtime, take on extra gigs, seize every opportunity. You can be the highest earner in your circle. But if your financial habits are leaking, if you're constantly swiping without thinking, borrowing without a plan, the result will always be the same: empty. That's what mismanagement does. It creates invisible leaks. Little by little, it drains what could have been a blessing, turning abundance into anxiety. And the scary part, we often don't even realize it's happening. The leaks aren't always huge purchases. Sometimes it's the daily, small decisions. The unplanned food deliveries, the forgotten subscriptions, the emotional shopping after a tough day. These seemingly insignificant leaks, over time, can quietly steal what you've worked so hard to earn. I've heard people blame their income, thinking, if I just made more, things would be different. But the problem isn't always the inflow. It's the container. It's the system. It's the mindset. You don't always need to keep earning more just to survive. You need to start sealing those holes. And the truth is, sealing those holes isn't exciting. It's not glamorous. It's not something that gets likes on social media. No one's going to applaud you for staying in instead of eating out. No one will notice you skipped the latest gadget to save. But those quiet decisions, that silent discipline, that's where the breakthrough begins. When you start tracking your spending, when you start telling your money where to go, instead of wondering where it went, that's when your bucket starts to hold. That's when progress becomes possible. And I know it's hard at first. When you're used to a certain lifestyle, change can feel uncomfortable. But small adjustments, made consistently, can transform a leaky bucket into a solid foundation. You'll start to realize that peace doesn't come from having more. It comes from having control. From knowing that whatever you earn, big or small, is being used wisely, purposefully, and in line with your goals. So, before you pray for more, before you chase that next income level, ask yourself, have I taken care of what I already have? Am I stewarding it well, or am I letting it slip through cracks I've been ignoring? Because the answer to our financial frustration isn't always external. Sometimes it lies in the very choices we make every single day. The ones that either seal the bucket or keep it leaking. Once you start to seal those leaks in your financial life, another profound truth becomes clear. Real wealth isn't built by how much you make, but by how disciplined you are with what you have. Discipline, not talent, not luck, not even a high income, is the bedrock of lasting financial stability. Because no matter how large the amount, if you lack the discipline to say no when you need to delay gratification, and to think long term, it won't last. There is a quiet power in being disciplined. It doesn't look exciting. In fact, it often feels inconvenient. It's choosing to cook at home, even when takeout is tempting. It's choosing to put money into savings, instead of clicking buy now on every online sale. It's choosing to walk away from a purchase, not because you can't afford it, but because you've decided your future matters more than the present moment. That's hard, especially in a world that constantly tells us to chase happiness through things: new clothes, fancy coffees, the latest tech. But what the world celebrates in the moment, discipline protects for the long haul. Discipline is waking up and choosing consistency over comfort. It's creating a budget and actually sticking to it. It's tracking your expenses, even when it feels tedious. And it's reminding yourself over and over that the goal isn't to impress others, it's to take care of your future. Some of the wealthiest people I know aren't flashy. They don't flaunt their bank accounts or brag about their purchases, but they have peace. They have options. They're free because they've built their lives on a foundation of discipline. They've made intentional decisions that allowed their money to grow, not just come and go. It's also crucial to remember that discipline isn't punishment. It's protection. You're not restricting yourself. You're preparing yourself. You're creating a life where you don't have to panic over every emergency, where you're not chained to your next paycheck, where you can give freely because you saved wisely. That kind of life doesn't happen by accident. It's built one decision at a time. And sometimes, people won't understand it. They might question your choices, your simplicity, your sacrifices. But that's okay, because at the end of the day, you know what you're building. You're not just spending for today, you're planting seeds for tomorrow. So, if you're in a season where you're choosing discipline, keep going. Even if no one sees it, even if it's not easy, The reward of discipline is always greater than the thrill of impulse. And when the results start showing in your savings, your peace, your freedom, you'll realize that discipline wasn't just a choice, it was your biggest investment. Discipline will get you started, but it's wisdom that keeps you steady. Because effort alone, no matter how strong or sincere, can only take you so far without direction. You can be working tirelessly, giving your all, pouring your energy into every opportunity. But if there's no wisdom guiding your decisions, it's easy to get stuck in a cycle of exhaustion without real progress. Wisdom is what helps you pause before you act. It teaches you to step back, assess, and make choices that lead to long-term stability, not just short-term success. And that kind of stability doesn't come from hustle alone. It comes from insight, from discernment, from asking the deeper questions like, is this the best use of my money? Or is this helping me move forward, or just keeping me busy? I know people who work so incredibly hard, they give everything to their jobs, their businesses, their careers, but they never take the time to reflect on how they're using what they earn. They think that if they just keep pushing, something will eventually click. But effort without wisdom can become wasted energy. It can look like movement, but still be going in circles. Wisdom teaches us to work smarter, not just harder, to plan ahead, to anticipate, to prepare. It helps us understand that not every opportunity is worth saying yes to, that sometimes slowing down to think is more powerful than rushing to act. Financially, wisdom shows up in the quiet moments when you choose to invest instead of impulsively spend. When you decide to learn about how money works instead of avoiding it out of fear. When you ask for advice, when you read, when you study, when you surround yourself with people who've been where you want to go. And most importantly, wisdom reminds us that money isn't just about math, it's about mindset. You can have the right numbers and still make poor choices if your thinking hasn't changed. But when you lead with wisdom, your decisions begin to align with your goals, and your financial habits start to reflect the kind of life you want to build. That's where stability is born, not from how fast you move, but from how well you understand your direction, from how deeply you value the lessons behind every peso or dollar you spend, from how intentionally you live, even in the small areas of your finances. So yes, work hard, keep showing up, keep giving your best, but pair your effort with wisdom. Let your hustle be guided by insight, because when wisdom walks with your work, you're not just chasing success, you're building a foundation that lasts a life that's stable, steady, and deeply rooted in purpose. You can have momentum. You can be in a season where everything seems to be moving forward, where doors are opening, where the blessings are pouring in. But if you don't know how to manage what's coming, that momentum won't last. Momentum is a gift. It's that energy you feel when things are flowing, when your efforts are paying off, when you're in demand, when you're finally seeing results. But here's what I've learned. Momentum may start success, but it's management that sustains it. Because momentum fades, seasons change, circumstances shift. The opportunities you have today may not be the same ones available tomorrow. And if you don't have a system, a way of managing what you've been given, you might find yourself losing the very thing you worked so hard to build. It's not enough to just keep moving. You have to know where you're going and how to handle what you've received along the way. I've seen people reach success, quickly. They blew up online, hit big sales, landed huge contracts. But because they didn't manage their success, financially, mentally, emotionally, it crumbled just as fast. They were carried by the wave of momentum, but they weren't ready to sustain the weight of what came with it. That's the danger of relying on momentum alone. It makes us feel invincible, like we can keep going at full speed forever. But without structure, without planning, without a clear sense of how to manage what's growing, success can actually become overwhelming. And unmanaged success can be just as dangerous as failure. Management is what brings order to the chaos. It's what helps you stay grounded when everything is moving quickly. It's what ensures that your income isn't just increasing, but your habits are maturing with it. It's what gives you the ability to scale your life with wisdom, not just excitement. And the truth is, good management often happens behind the scenes. It's the stuff people don't see. The quiet budgeting, the tracking, the setting aside, the choosing to say no or knock side when everything around you is saying yes. It's the discipline of continuing to think long-term, even when short-term success is tempting you to relax. This is why management is a form of SEL leadership. You're not just reacting to life, you're leading it. You're taking responsibility not only for what you earn, but for how you handle it. And in that responsibility, you gain power, you gain peace, you gain the ability to keep going, not just for a moment, but for a lifetime. So, when momentum comes, be grateful, ride the wave, celebrate the wins, but don't forget to manage it well. Because what you manage well, you multiply, and what you neglect, you eventually lose. Sometimes we think the only reason someone is struggling financially is because they don't have enough money. But the truth is, many people are broke not because they lack money, but because they lack management. It's a hard truth, but a necessary one, because if we don't confront it, we'll keep blaming our income, our job, the economy, everything outside of us, without ever looking at what's happening inside our own habits and decisions. The problem isn't always the paycheck. Sometimes it's what happens the moment that paycheck arrives. Money can't fix poor habits. In fact, money often magnifies them. If someone is careless with a small amount, they'll likely be careless with a large one. If someone spends impulsively with a little, they'll spend impulsively with a lot. More money doesn't always mean more PEACE. Sometimes it just means more pressure, more expenses, and more opportunities to make the same mistakes on a larger scale. That's why it's so important to shift our mindset. Instead of constantly chasing more, we need to start mastering what's already in our hands, because you can increase your income tenfold. But if you don't change the way you manage it, you'll still end up in the same place. Stressed, stretched, and stuck. I've heard stories, maybe you have too, of people winning the lottery, inheriting wealth, or earning big overnight, and within a few years, everything's gone. Not because they were unlucky, but because they were unprepared. Because without the skill of management, even the biggest blessing can turn into a burden. It's not just about how much comes in, it's about how much stays and how it's us. Are you budgeting? Are you saving? Are you investing wisely? Are you giving intentionally?